is KovsieTV, and I am not alone. I am with the gorgeous and the talented Luca Dimoon. Stay tuned, do not go anywhere. Okay, so I see that you are very interested in Africa and you always come here. I just want to know, what is it that keeps you coming back this side to our continent?
So yeah, the main thing that fascinates me about Africa, which is something that I also encountered in India back 2 years back, it's a sense of brotherhood that in Europe we may be lost, or I don't know if we ever had it, but so it's mainly this sense of brotherhood between people, and the openness and the warmth that I perceive between people that in Europe we don't have. Like people in Europe are way more individualistic and cold and reserved. And in my case, that has an impact on my day-to-day life. When I'm walking around and people greet me on the street, or you get in a taxi and someone start talking to you and you start talking about small chat, whatever. In Italy, especially like in the north or in London, that's way more rare. So that's the main thing that I like, which, like I said, it impacts the quality of life to me, because at the end of the day, as human beings, we're all looking for connection, you know, uh, hopefully on a spiritual level, not just physical. So um, what I love about Africa is this sense of connection that I perceive, between people, and also that I perceive towards me, when I interact in different environments.
Okay, so from traveling around the world, not just Africa, how has that influenced your music as an artist?
It influenced in different on different levels, rhythmically, like harmonically, obviously, and then the approach towards music, like again from a spiritual standpoint. Um, so it has a deep impact, and I've been always fascinated by the tribal cultures, not just from Africa, but like I said, from India, from Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, or South America. So when it comes to Africa, I'm very inspired by the rhythmical like skills that you have here, around Africa, and then again the approach, the posture that musicians have towards music, which is not necessarily technical. In fact, I've been meeting people who are technically not that skilled, but the way they feel music and the way they interpret it, even if it's simple, it's very like soulful and passionate, and that, to me, that's what makes a difference.
Okay, so you released your album Telescope in 2016, but end of 2016. But I want to know, how long did it actually take you to finish that album, and why did it take so long?
It took me only 8 years. Not a big deal. So, yeah, it took me 8 years, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Because I wrote the songs, I composed the songs myself, I produced, I played most of the instruments, and I engineered them. So, doing all that work by myself. I had some collaborations with musicians, but it was mostly, orchestrating myself. So that took time. And then, like I said, because as a perfectionist, that also adds more time. And the other element was that I ended up sort of like trapped in a revolving door where I was never satisfied. And so this would happen, like when I first started working on the first like 4 tracks of the album. They were almost done. Then I moved after, like, that took me like a year. Then I started working on the second bunch of songs, and that between the first 4 tracks and the second 3 4 tracks, it has been like maybe a couple of years. So then, but in those 2 years, I developed as a singer, as a producer, whatever. So then when I looked back at the first 4 tracks, I was like, you know, I need to add, I need to fix this, maybe I need to resing this. So I went back working on those 4 tracks, the first 4 tracks, and then that took me another year. And then looking back at the second round after that year of fixing the first 4 tracks, then I'm like, you know, again, I developed more. So then maybe I should fix those second group of songs, and that was, you know, that lasted 8 years. You know, for the I actually wrote like about 20 songs. I fully produced, and you know, done like 20 songs, and then I took the 13 for the album. The other thing also is that the album is conceived in a way as if it's like a musical journey. So it's not just songs like thrown together. There's also a sense, you know, and a logic. So if you listen to the album from top to bottom, it's like a musical journey. So, you know, for me, it like I've been working a lot also on the order and how to connect each track and how to place them. You know, that also. So when I was almost done, for example, there was a transition from one track to another that was too like rough, you know, too improvise, like too, you know, strong. So because it wasn't flowing like I wanted, then I was like, I need to create another track in between that's kind of, you know, works as a bridge between those 2 songs. So all these elements, you know, had an influence of the amount of time that it took me to work on the album.
So I watched your video Liberated, really loved it, but I want to know, what is the story behind it? Because I feel like it's not just a very pretty music video. There is actually a story behind it, or there was a long thought process of it. Could you please explain what is that song about, and the music video, what actually went into making it?
That song was actually supposed to be in the album, but then it didn't make it because, again, I didn't feel that it was flowing with the idea that I wanted to express. But that video in particular was the first video that I shot and directed myself, and I shot it in Tarakan, between Tarakan and Mabul, those which are very tiny island at the north of Borneo. Borneo is the third biggest island on the planet. It's between Malaysia and Indonesia. It's 70% Indonesian, 30% Malaysian. And I was in those islands to explore and venture. And I choose that reality because you see people and that it's a very secluded island, like I said, and people in that island is so small that they build houses on the water, because you can cross the island from one side to another in like maybe 6 minutes, 5 minutes, because it's like it's a bunch of sand in the water. So you have people building these wooden houses on the water, and because it's so tiny and secluded and out of the world, like a lot of people there are not aware about the rest of the world. They don't know that there's Africa. They don't know that there's Europe. They don't know. All they know, the world for them is that island, and maybe they heard some stories. So because of that, that has an impact on the community, on their cultural background and perception of themselves as a group of people, of life. So there's a sense of innocence I found in that community that inspired me to capture those scenes for that video, which for the song Liberate, which is it talks about liberating yourself from conditionment, and the walls that we have in our mind and the walls that society creates around us, to kind of control and feed like the agenda of the few powerful people.
So from traveling, and I'm sure you've seen other artists and you've worked with other artists, what have you taken from them, and what kind of artist do you not want to become in the future?
That I don't want to become. You see, for me, when you have when you're in a position of exposure, for whatever reason, through art or politics, or also as an athlete, for example. You become at the center of attention, so people look up to you. So I believe that it would be nice to have a sense of responsibility and try to share, positive energy, messages, whatever. So what I don't want to become, and I don't think I'll ever become, because now I'm way too rooted in the way, I am. It's one of those very like misleading, let me put it that way to be politically correct, artists that just talk about, superficial things that don't feed your soul, and that perpetuate the consumerism, in society, and then perpetuate the, commodification of people, of women. They see women as piece of meat, objects, or, in general, people, that as consumers. I'm not trying to promote that, and I'm actually against that. I'm against every type of division, and I try to fight that every day. I'm against every type of discrimination. It could be racism, it could be a religious discrimination, gender discrimination, everything that sets us apart. So what I try to do is bring people together, because like I said, connection, it's at the core of a healthy existence.
Okay, so what do you have planned for 2018, and what else are you going to be doing during your stay here in South Africa?
My plan is to receive, like, be open for as much love as I can receive from the beautiful South African people. Hey now. So my plan is to be here, promote my music through shows, interviews like what we're doing right now, collaborate with local, like with South African musicians and our artists, not just on a musical level, also like experimenting with other medias like videos or painting, sculptures, or like fashion, like to design, clothes and stuff. So my plan is to just like get deep in the culture, and embrace and exchange and vibrate, and hopefully be inspired and inspire, to just make beautiful things and share love and peace and brotherhood.
Okay, just a quick summary. Who is Luca Dimoon? Am I saying it right? Luca Dimoon, right? So I have to look at the moon. Look at him. Just quickly, who is he? His fashion sense. Who is he as an artist? All of those key things.
So I consider myself, generally an explorer. I like to explore things through different medias, like I was saying. I used to like the first media that I embraced was like drawing, art, like painting. So I studied fine arts. So music at first was more like a private thing that I would keep for myself in my room. Matter of fact, I started singing as a kid. When I was singing Michael Jackson, I was like most of the time singing in my room to express like intense feelings. So whether I was very happy, I would put music and start singing or dancing. And then on the other hand, like if I was like sad, instead of crying as a kid, I would start, I would sing, maybe, some like ballad, Michael Jackson. I remember Man in the Mirror, which is very like heartfelt, and then when I started then getting more serious with fine arts, doing like, fine art school and all that, music became more prominent and more, it was taking more space in my life. And then when I moved to London, like at 19, that's when music like took over completely, because the live scene in London was so vibrant and powerful that I was like, this is what I want to do. So then that's where I, started like working with producers. That's when I started doing shows, little gigs and writing songs. So obviously like music is still the main media, the main form of expression for me. But in the last few years, I've also developed new medias, and I got into video making, directing pictures, and then for fun, I like to now make my own clothes, because as I like to experiment and explore in different fields, I express it through in different ways. So the way I dress, the way I write, the way I see, capture images or make music, or so. Yeah, mostly an explorer, I think. I don't see myself, and I think like the great Oscar Wilde, this amazing writer, used to say, to define is to limit, so I don't like to define myself too much, so kind of way, putting myself in a box, so that's why I like the term explorer, which I believe Picasso was also using it. And just explore in different directions. Goodbye, KovsieTV. Thank you for having me. My name is Luca Dimoon. Peace out.